Welcome to another edition of What's the Big Idea, where we hear big ideas from the leading voices shaping current and emerging best practices in the professional and nonprofit world. I'm your host, Hank Boyer, CEO and founder of Boyer Management Group. Today, we're speaking with Steve Jurash, who's president of the Manufacturing Alliance of Philadelphia. Steve, welcome to What's the Big Idea. Please tell us a little bit about the Manufacturing Alliance of Philadelphia. What do you guys do?
Sure. We're the trade association for manufacturing in the 5 southeastern PA counties. We represent a little over 5,000 manufacturing companies and several 100,000 manufacturing employees.
So that's a big organization. Tell us, how did you get started there?
Started as a consultant in 1999, showing manufacturing companies how to market themselves again. We spun off the Manufacturing Alliance in 2006.
Wow. So what does MAP do differently than other manufacturers associations?
There is no one representing the small to medium-sized manufacturer in this region other than MAP, so that's what we do.
So that it's the small to mid-sized manufacturers that are the largest employers, and some would argue the absolute lifeblood of the economy itself. So we had this major crisis occur in the early part of 2020, and I'm sure you guys were affected. How was your manufacturing affected in the Philadelphia region by this crisis?
Yeah, in the early days of COVID-19, there was so much information coming out, and the problem with the information was oftentimes conflicting. So what would come out of City Hall was different from what would come out of the state capitol. So what we did at the time, and I think our contribution, was to make sure that we communicated good information to our people in a timely fashion.
Wow. So as a leader, how do you help those 5,000 plus members to cope?
Sure. So as a leader, I think you've got to be both brutally honest. You've got to give them a clear, concise picture of what the problems are. And you have to give credible hope. You have to let people know that collectively we will get through this together.
So there's a lot of uncertainty, and people get fearful in times of uncertainty. So how do you help them deal with their individual fears as a leader?
Yeah, we acknowledge their fear. I mean, you can't pretend people aren't afraid. They won't. You're not credible if you do that. So you have to acknowledge their fears.
And so, of course, they're not prepared. So all of a sudden, they're facing new things. What does a crisis force leaders to do differently?
I think one thing is that they need to make sure that the information they're putting out is credible. We talked about that. Also, it's how you transmit the information that's really important. I call it the 3 R's: review, repeat, and reinforce. You can't just assume that people are going to, everybody's going to get the information, number one, and if they do get it, that they understand it. So that's important to do it that way.
So tell us a little bit more about what a good leader does when handling that information, because it seems to me like communications and information is critical to keep people aligned and unified.
Yeah, I mean, particularly when information is not existent, it's just not there. And that's a problem, because what happens is people turn to gossip, they tend to make things up.
That's not good.
Not good. And frequently, what they make up is worse than the actual reality of the situation.
Oh, boy. So I would seem to me also that there's an incredible amount of pressure due to acting. You've got not only your normal business to figure out, but now all these new things coming at you that you're not prepared for. Tell us a little bit about leading in the face of time pressure.
Yeah, so acknowledging that time is compressed and that there's enormous pressure to act. You've got to get information out. You need to be proactive and take the initiative. Do something, even if it might be wrong, because analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis is not good in a crisis. The other important thing I learned was you need to take 5-minute breaks. You need to back away a little bit. Don't become part of the crisis. If you get too drawn into it, you're going to make mistakes.
Very good advice. We've been speaking with Steve Jurash, president of the Manufacturing Alliance of Philadelphia, here on What's the Big Idea. Steve, what's the big idea or big ideas you'd like viewers to take away from our discussion today?
I think number one is handling information. Make sure it's accurate. What you're putting out is accurate information. Number two, acknowledge people's fears, because that's how you get on the same page with them. And number three, time is compressed. Remember that. Don't become part of the crisis.
So, Steve, what is the website where people can learn more about the Manufacturing Alliance of Philadelphia?
Sure, manufacturingonline.org.
One more time.
Manufacturingonline.org.
And I want to thank Steve Jurash for joining us today here on What's the Big Idea, sharing his thoughts about leading in times of crisis, making today's show both educational and entertaining. I'd like to also thank our viewers for watching, otherwise we wouldn't have a show. For What's the Big Idea, I'm your host, Hank Boyer, encouraging you to use these big ideas to make a difference. Goodbye, folks. Until next time.